The man who cleaned the king's hole for 28 years. Yes, you heard that right. For nearly 3 decades, one man's duty was not commanding armies, not shaping laws, not wearing a crown, but wiping King Henry's most private parts. Absurd? Absolutely. But here's the chilling twist. This humiliating job was one of the most powerful roles in all of England. Because when you controlled the king's most private moments, you controlled the king himself. Picture Tudor England in the early 1500s. The air inside the palace was heavy from smoke from giant fireplaces. Banquet halls overflowed with roasted boar, dripping pies, and oceans of wine. Music, laughter, and whispers of betrayal echoed in the shadows. At the center of it all was Henry VIII, towering, broad-shouldered, unpredictable. A man who devoured food like a beast, who crushed enemies without hesitation, and who married and discarded queens as if they were seasonal garments. And next to him, closer than any general, bishop, or wife, stood William Compton. Not a knight on the battlefield, not a counselor in Parliament, but the Groom of the Stool. The title sounds laughable, the royal toilet attendant. But in the deadly chessboard of Henry's court, the Groom of the Stool was more powerful than dukes who commanded armies. Why? Because kings were never truly alone. Every private moment, every sigh, every groan, every whisper was witnessed. And the man who witnessed them was trusted with secrets no one else would ever hear. The Groom of the Stool wasn't just cleaning. He tracked the king's digestion, reported on his health, guarded medical secrets, and, most importantly, controlled access. If you wanted the king to hear your petition, you went through Compton. If you wanted a favor, a title, or a pardon, you bribed Compton. What looked like humiliation, in fact, was raw, dangerous power. William Compton wasn't born into immense power, but he had something rarer, the king's trust. The two had grown up together, played as boys, and learned to ride and hunt side by side. When Henry became king, he didn't trust noble families who plotted and schemed. He trusted the man who had seen him at his weakest. Compton became Groom of the Stool, an appointment that made others sneer, until they realized just how much influence he held. Soon Compton was more than a servant. He was managing Henry's finances, signing off on petitions, even arranging land grants. He gained wealth, titles, and the ear of the most dangerous man in Europe. Every lord and lady at court bowed, not just to Henry, but to the man who cleaned him. But don't be fooled into thinking this was easy. Serving Henry VIII was like living in the jaws of a lion. Henry was a man of monstrous appetites. He devoured banquets until his stomach rebelled. He drank until his body swelled, and as the years passed, his once athletic frame turned into a mountain of flesh. Ulcers festered on his legs. His temper grew volcanic. And Compton was always there. When Henry raged, when Henry groaned in pain, when Henry collapsed. One wrong word, one hint of disloyalty, and Compton could lose everything. Henry had no hesitation about destroying even his closest companions. Friends, wives, advisors, they all met the executioner's blade. Imagine waking each day knowing the king's moods, his diseases, and his darkest secrets, while realizing those very secrets could get you killed. For 28 years, William Compton stayed by Henry's side. He watched queens rise and queens fall. He saw Anne Boleyn seduce her way to power and then lose her head. He stood silent as nobles were dragged to the Tower, accused of treason by whispers. Through it all, Compton remained. He had no choice. His loyalty was his protection. His silence was his shield. And yet, imagine the things he saw. The paranoia, the betrayals, the king's private humiliations. A lifetime of secrets locked away in the mind of one man who history remembers only as a servant, when in truth he was one of the most dangerous men alive. So what do we learn from this? that in the world of kings, power didn't always come from crowns, swords, or armies. Sometimes it came from the most unthinkable places, from being the one person the king could never live without. The groom of the stool may sound laughable, but William Compton proved that even the dirtiest job could make a man one of the most powerful figures in England. And this wasn't unique. Across Europe, monarchs created roles so bizarre, so humiliating, you'll wonder how anyone accepted them. But they did, because where kings ruled, survival meant bending, bowing, and even wiping. If you're fascinated by these dark, hidden corners of history, subscribe now, because this story is only the beginning.